It's like having a song that you don't really like stuck in your head, but it's just bok soy. How does it feel? Can someone explain exactly how it feels? Ayo. Welcome to Boneitch. My name is Luca and I make videos about what it's like to live with Tourette's. And today I want to do a video about a subject that has been requested quite a lot and that I think is quite interesting, and that is mental tics or cognitive tics. What are they? How does it work? What's my experience with it? So that's all we're going to talk about today. And of course, before we start, if you are new here and you are interested in learning more about Tourette's, don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bells. You'll get notified when I upload a new video that's at least weekly. So yeah, I'd love for you to join our little Boneitch club family thing. So cognitive tics or mental tics is something that is not talked about as much as the more obvious tics. The reason that mental tics and cognitive tics are not that obvious for the people around you is that they're just literally just in your head, the tics that just happen in your head. Now, before I explain how that works, I want to give a bit of a disclaimer. Mental tics are definitely not something only people with Tourette's and other tic disorders have. So if you don't have any other tics, but you do have mental tics, don't worry, that does not mean you have a tic disorder. It is quite common for other disorders, but also in general for people to have these types of tics. So don't worry, yeah. So cognitive tics or mental tics are tics that are just in your head. They're kind of like a thought, kind of like an intrusive thought, kind of like having a song stuck in your head, and this is where it gets a bit difficult to explain. It feels like a tic. I wish that I could explain exactly how a tic feels, but it is very sudden and quite uncontrollable often. Now, I think the most common mental or cognitive tics are vocal types of cognitive tics or verbal ones. So that's where you have a word that just pops up in your head and it kind of repeats itself. For me, it's the word bok soy. That's just a word that keeps popping up, and I hate the word now. It's like having a song that you don't really like stuck in your head, but it's just bok soy. And for me, actually, when I was younger, I did not have a lot of verbal tics, so the types of tics where you say whole words, but I did have verbal mental tics. And I remember the first time I was aware that I was having loads of these verbal tics, and I was cycling home from the supermarket, and all of a sudden I blurted out that word that I was ticking in my head, and I had never done that, so that was a bit of a situation, but it's also possible to have motor cognitive tics. For me, it's weird. It's like you are ready to do the movement. It's like your brain fires off that little go move, but you don't. I think the best way to explain it is when you watch something like a movie or something, and you see someone, I don't know, get hurt, and you kind of physically react to it without actually moving. So you can kind of feel how it would feel if you did the movement. And it's very sudden, but it is there. It's difficult to explain what it's like, but if you have those types of mental or cognitive tics, that you probably understand what I'm talking about. Ayo, some people might think of mental tics and think it's part of something like OCD, so like obsessive-compulsive disorder. But there is a clear distinction between mental tics and obsessions. Even though, of course, a person can have both, they are quite different, because an obsession is aimed at a negative thought or a ritual. The thought that comes up is linked to anxiety or fear or a ritual that has to be done. Whereas a mental tic in and of itself does not have a purpose. It's kind of the same as the video I did about stimming, where stimming, the self-stimulating movements that is, for example, quite common in people with autism or autistic people, has a self-soothing type of reason, or what is it? What's the word? The purpose for stimming is that it is self-soothing, whereas a tic does not have a purpose. It just happens. It's the movement in and of itself that is the goal. So there is a clear distinction between the two, even though, and I just did very quick research, it is possible for people to have mental tics that do cause people to act. So for example, I had that when I was very young, sitting on the back seat of the car, and with every lamppost that came by, I had this urge or this mental tic that I felt that I had to raise my toes to kind of go around every lamppost. And the wiggling of my toes was not really the tic, it was more the thought. And that kind of sounds like an obsession, but it wasn't an obsession because there was no fear or no ritual connected to it. But yeah, so somehow these things kind of overlap sometimes and maybe difficult to distinguish between each other, which is the vocal, which is an obsession and what is a tic, especially if you have both. Ew. So many people with Tourette's will have cognitive tics or mental tics. For me, it's a lot when I have a lot of brain fog, when I'm very sluggish. It feels like there's a lot of a very large barrier between my brain and actually moving and actually ticking like verbal tics out loud. So it just kind of happens in my head and it doesn't come out. Ayo. But it's also very common for people in general, also especially for other neurodiverse people, so people with ADHD and autistic people, because it has this effect of releasing dopamine. It usually happens when people are bored or understimulated, that their brain just kind of makes up stuff to stimulate itself. And that's, of course, especially for example, for someone with ADHD, something that often happens, getting understimulated and your brain making up something to activate itself, right? So it's definitely not something that only people with Tourette's have or with tics have. But it makes sense that if you already have very outward tics, that you would also have them, those types of tics that just kind of get stuck in your head, right? So yeah, I mean, do you have mental tics or cognitive tics? Do you have a tic disorder or Tourette's? And did you know that was part of Tourette's? And if you don't have Tourette's, but you do experience these things, let me know. What's your experience with it? How does it feel? Can someone explain exactly how it feels? Because it's difficult to explain how a mental tic is different than just a thought that pops up. And I haven't found the right analogy yet. So if you have one, let me know. And I hope you have a great day, wherever you are. I love you all so much. See you soon. Bye.